And we are live in 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Town Hall Tuesday. This is Candy Bryan, and this is the Good Morning Show, your place of faith in the morning. Thank you for tuning in. We can already see people jumping on the live with us. So, if you are just now tuning in, please tag a friend's name, share the live. All you have to do is go into the live broadcast and hit the share button. Hey, we got the early birds on this morning. Good morning, Ronald Jones. Good morning, Marjorie. And, it is a topic that needs to be discussed, so I'm hoping that we've got some folks that will take me up on my offer. It is Town Hall Tuesday. Town Hall Tuesday is dedicated to you being on the broadcast and sharing your thoughts. Especially right now, we need to hear from people all over who have something to share, who have something to contribute to the conversation and bring solutions. I mean, ultimately, we want to talk about the pain and the trauma. That is important that we have that discussion. But it's also important that we talk about solutions. So Town Hall Tuesday is dedicated to everything that is going on in the world right now, the Black Lives Matter movement, the racial injustice, the riots, the protests, anything that you can think of that we're seeing before our eyes. We're talking about that, but then we're talking about the deeper things. We're talking about the trauma that's felt. We're talking about the years of hurt and pain and unresolved and unhealed wounds that we have. So good morning. Good morning. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Good Morning Show. It is your place of faith in the morning. I'm Candy Bryan. I would love for you to tag someone. Tag 2 people. All you have to do is put their name in the comments. If their name pops up, just click on that name and that will alert them that we're here. And if you want someone to be a part of this conversation this morning, go wake them up. Go put them in the chat. Also, hit the share button. Don't forget to share the show as you are watching this morning. So let's say good morning to some folks. Hey, Sandra, good morning. Good morning. I was hoping that Sandra would come on and share her thoughts, but maybe not. Maybe too early today. She was just on the show on Friday. Marceline, my sister. Good morning, Marceline. Good morning. Good morning. And Eddie. Good morning. It's Eddie from South Africa. I'm loving your show. And I love the interview yesterday. Oh my gosh. Eddie from South Africa. You just made my year. I'm reading this and I'm like, I got chills, especially since I'm a Christian actor and Christian media being a new thing in South Africa. You indeed inspire me. Eddie, you have got to reach out to me on private messenger. Let's talk because on Wednesday, this is actually a good time to talk about it. On the Good Morning Show on Wednesdays, we are doing Worldwide Wednesday. That's always been a dream of mine. I've been doing my podcast for over 3 years now. But on Wednesdays, I tried to reach out across the seas, across the world to other people of faith in other countries. And so Eddie, you don't even know what this just did for me this morning. Thank you for tuning in from South Africa. I don't know what time it is over there. It's probably pretty late, right? Or midday. God bless you. And thank you for tuning in. Let's get in touch. Thank you so much. Elisa, good morning. Shanae, good morning. Nancy, good morning. Oh, so someone said the show is going to go global. It was a good friend of mine. And I'm like, oh, my friends are just trying to encourage me. But, I also am a believer that what we speak, what we declare, it will be so. And so I hope that the show continues to impact people around the local area and certainly around the country. Today's Town Hall Tuesday, so I'm going to bring the guest on this morning. You are the guest. So if you go to my post, my most recent post on my Facebook profile, you will see the link to join live. Yes, I said live to anyone who might want to join. Very scary moment for me every Tuesday. But I know that this is a safe space. At least we create the safe space. And so I want to say good morning to a few people. First, I'm bringing on Eunice Smith. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning. How are you, Candy? And thank you for having me.
Oh no, thank you for saying yes. You'd like to come on it, and we were talking right before we hit go live, and we met during a conference for
Yes.
a wonderful nonprofit in Chicago. Now, tell us where you're tuning in from.
I'm also tuning in from Chicago.
Yes, I love it when people tune in from out of state. uh, so, Eunice, you are in good company. I'm going to bring on our guest therapist. She is a family member to the Good Morning Show, Shelly Fan. Good morning.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Awesome.
I want to introduce you to Eunice.
Hi, Miss Shelley. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking.
Candy, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Oh, there's the therapist coming out this morning. How are you?
I didn't say it like that.
Real answer only.
Yeah, right.
That.
Yeah. But Shelly is a gifted psychotherapist, and I'm going to have you ladies share your occupation, your business, whatever it is that you do. As you start to share this morning, we're going to see if we can get one more person on camera, and he might be backstage, but he's a local leader in his church ministry. Gerald Gamara will be joining. He was also on last week and kind of shared. He's from Chicago as well, Gerald, and he also has faced injustices and has some strong feelings about what's going on in the world right now. And he joined us. So thank you, Gerald. If you're there, when I see your video come up, we'll bring you on. So I want to go around the horn. Town Hall Tuesday kind of started as a way that people could just give their voice to wherever this goes, and whoever it will impact. We wanted to take not only the approach of sharing what's on our hearts and minds, because a lot of people are doing that everywhere around the world, but also talking about critical steps towards a solution. And here we talk about it from a faith-based perspective, but not everyone who's come on the show has shared a faith-based perspective, but they've shared an important perspective, and we respect that. So we're going to kick it off with you, Eunice. You saw the post, and you're like, "Yeah, I can do that. I can share something."
Yes.
So, what's on your heart and mind concerning everything that's going on right now?
Well, thank you again for this opportunity to kind of just share what I've been thinking about. There are a couple of things that are really pressing to me in this moment. One is kind of the fact that we know that we have a lot of policies in place and systems that create the systemic racism that we deal with. But one of the things that I'm noticing more so than the policy itself is the application or the enforcement of that policy, which is what creates the disparities.
Mm-hmm.
So the concern that I have is, what are we doing, or how are we folding the behaviors into the ask for what we want to see a difference in, right? Because we can have policies change, but if the people who are enforcing those policies are not also changing, how is it going to really be a positive impact on our community?
Can I ask you a question? Yesterday, I saw a post. Great point, by the way. We can have policies all day long if there's no accountability, and if the people who are making the decisions are not looking like us,
and still don't care.
Right. So my question is, I saw a post yesterday, and it's this person said, brown and black people, brown and black people need to go in and occupy positions in the police organizations and government, and there needs to be kind of a big push to get people of other cultures involved in these positions, and that is part of the solution. What are your thoughts about that?
I absolutely agree with that in general. But one of the things that concerns me is still the heart of the man. And I don't mean man as in just physically men, but men and women. And part of the reason I say that is because we have been faced with so much trauma that many times when we are placed in those positions of authority, we tend to be worse on ourselves than the other people are. So it's really, I'm so glad, Dr. Shelley, that you're here, because maybe you can speak to how we can kind of recondition ourselves to understand when the policy itself is not necessarily fair, and how we can apply it more fairly across the board. Because it's not just enough to say we're going to be placed in positions of power, but if we also understand that we can't be holding our knees on each other's necks, then if we don't understand that and apply that for ourselves, then because what often happens is we remember in the days of slavery, they would put a Black slave in charge of other slaves. So I don't want that same mentality to be there, because then on paper, we have more Black leaders, but in reality and behind the scenes, do we really? So that's really the concern there.
Shelley, you want to speak to some of that?
Absolutely. Basically, what she's saying is that once we get to these positions, we're going to have to be able to lead from a place of power and not from a place of pain, not from a pain point, but a power point. And you said trauma. Trauma is emotional injury. And one of the leading forces that guide the way that we behave, the way that we think, the way that we decide is unresolved emotional injury. And I'm so happy that you brought that up, because a lot of what we're seeing has to do with secondary trauma. And that is that I still have the same post-traumatic symptomology. I'm still not sleeping, not eating. I'm still having the nightmares, even though I was not the direct victim of the aversive action or the aversive incident. But because characteristics are similar, because the probability that will happen to me is high, or because it's someone that looks like someone that I love and respect, that I too now am experiencing this symptomology. And we have a whole entire people that we are seeing them react, not necessarily respond, right? We want to get to a place where we are responding and not reacting, but you see a people that are reacting, and even police officers who have that unresolved injury themselves because of trauma, because of not having a safe space to say, I'm having nightmares after that incident. I'm having nightmares after walking into that home and seeing that 13-year-old hanging from his closet. They don't have a safe space to do that. The first thing they ask them to do is surrender their weapon. They don't have the support systems in place. They feel like they can't be open to the medical or mental health professionals that they put in place to help them to work through that trauma. So they are working and carrying that trauma with them. And when you have unresolved trauma, then you are operating in your trauma brain. And I can do an 8-hour lesson on that. So let me try to narrow it down to about 15, 20 seconds. But the trauma brain is basically the brain's response to keep us alive and well in a situation where a situation that we deem dangerous, right? So we see our brains are telling us, okay, our well-being is threatened. We are at imminent risk of harm and danger. And so when that happens, the emotional centers of our brain, it's a little part of our brain back here, gets ignited. And it's responsible for sending blood to our hands and arms and to send blood to our legs so we can jump the fence or beat the bear up or take the burglar that just got into our home down. It goes into survival mode. And the brain's responsibility is to make sure that we get out of that unsafe space into a safe space. It's an amazing thing that the brain does. What happens, though, is that when we do not heal our trauma, we continue to think in that trauma brain. When your emotional centers are ignited, it suppresses your ability to logically think. So you can't have two leading the parade. So when our emotional centers are ignited, it's telling us survive, survive, survive. We call it the trauma brain. We call it the survival brain. We are not necessarily accessing the centers of our brain that has the ability to forecast the consequences of our actions. That happens in the frontal lobe. So we have to get people healed so they're not operating in that trauma brain, in that trigger response, making decisions that are not logical, making decisions where we are not operating for the better good. We can put an amazing leader in a powerful position that will not be able to execute because there's all this unresolved pain and injury and trauma that has not been addressed.
And Shelley, do you know, I know that you also work with juveniles. Have you heard of what kind of care, mental health care, those that are in law enforcement are receiving? Do you know, or have you heard of what they are mandated to do? Are they mandated to do anything?
Well, first, I don't know if it's necessarily mandated. I think that there are resources that are in place for them in case they want to access it. But you can have resources that are accessible to you and not feel safe enough to access them.
Exactly.
Right? We all have the same resources accessible to us. This whole world could pick up a phone call and call a therapist and get help. But you know how many percentage of people do that? They just normalize their abnormalities.
Yeah, 1%.
They normalize their abnormalities.
Mm-hmm.
They get stuck in their blind, emotional, injurious space, and don't really operate in the authority that they have to take dominion in their emotional world.
Yeah.
And so if we who are not experiencing or have access to those levels of trauma that our police officers face, and let me say this, the last time I said it, someone said, how was that cop's response? How was his knee on George Floyd's neck some type of trauma response? Well, that was murder. But we also see that there have been issues where the police officer's response has been very quick, very triggered, very not, not necessarily in a way where they're accessing the things that they learned in training. And that is because that quick response, that impulsivity, that's a trauma response. Those impulsive responses that have taken the lives of people are clear indicators of unresolved trauma.
Absolutely.
I want to welcome Gerald Gamera to the conversation as well. Shelly, Eunice, this has been so good already, and we're just at 8:05. We have about 7 minutes with each other left. But I want to turn it over to Gerald. One of the questions that I put out there yesterday on a post said, what is the community of faith doing for Black Lives Matter? And I know that you've been in leadership in ministries here locally. Gerald, what do you see the church doing? What is your church doing right now?
Well, I'm very blessed to be associated with a few different people in different leaderships. I personally haven't seen my church do much because everybody's social distancing and we're still staying in our homes and doing everything online. One of the things that I've seen addressed, which I don't think it's a negative thing, I just think it could be addressed better. And when we talk about the topic of racism, right, we go back to some type of demonic spiritual stronghold in the community. And I think that kind of deflects from what's really going on in the community. Another thing that I've noticed that people have refrained from using the word Black Lives Matter. I've looked in different forums, different posts. I see some churches that do, some churches that don't. For some reason, social justice has become like a political statement or even a terrorist group. And I just wonder, is asking for equal rights terrorism? It shocks me that some people would refrain from it. I mean, this is the situation that we have at the moment. To deflect from that, I think is not godly, from the church. Yeah. And I don't want to condemn any churches out there. It's just, it's a little sad and disappointing, that we will stand closer to our political beliefs versus the situation that's happening right now, an abuse of authority, an abuse on race, an abuse on Blacks. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity in a lot of churches right now. And maybe, I should hold accountable my own church in that matter. I really, and maybe I missed it in the clip, it's been a little bit different to be focused on live stream than it is to when you're sitting in a church. But I really haven't seen much of it, right? Just going back to scriptures and that. And I think it needs to be addressed. We need to denounce, what's going on, and we need to stand behind it. And I don't know if I had a scripture on one of my posts where it says we don't have to understand, but we have to weep with our brothers. And if that's how they feel at the moment, then that's where we should be ministering to people, at that moment. Then again, I've had other friends in ministry that I've seen them go out there, join the protest, give out water, pray with them. I think this is the right thing to do. This is what we should be doing as a church, being supportive, and that's great. I even see other people that are not involved in church that are not Black, and they're being involved in these marches and walks. And I think that's fantastic. So I guess just to sum that up, I think the church needs to do more.
You said it. That was a great way to end that. We're going to go back over to Eunice, but I want to play this brief clip. Hopefully I can get 30 seconds in, and I wanted you guys to see this. This is Stephen Furtick and John Gray. I don't know if anyone caught any of their clips on YouTube, but they had a conversation here at Stephen Furtick's church, Elevation Church.
I realized that if we wait for everyone to agree with
That's
it,
right,
or figure out how to say it just right, like it might come out wrong, but at least we're speaking.
come on.
And
At
I may
least we're
say
speaking.
something stupid, but we have lost this art of conversation because we have replaced it with clicks and comments. And so we don't talk, so we don't empathize. And since we have no relationships with people who don't understand our perspective, we continue to use even religious as a system to confirm our biases.
So I'm going to stop that right there, because that will open up a whole can of worms.
It will.
So, Eunice, you're coming from Gerald's hometown, Chicago. I know, Gerald, you joined a few minutes after we joined, and Eunice is actually in Chicago. So give us some of your thoughts on what you see the faith-based community in your area doing or not doing.
Well, to be quite honest, I'm in the Chicagoland suburbs, and just like Gerald said, I don't see them doing enough, and that's not to condemn, but I'm comparing to what I see in the faith-based community when it's time to get us out to vote for the candidate that they want us to vote for, right? We see them talking about what the candidates have done. We see them talking about how important it is for us to vote. I would love to see that same kind of messaging coming across to say we need to support the Black Lives Matter movement, and here's why and here's how. And that actually brings me to the second thing that really is on my heart this morning, and that is I see companies pumping $100,000, $1 million into organizations that are supposed to be furthering this cause. But my question is twofold. One, what is the real ask? Like, what are the 5 or 7 or 10 things that we're really going after when we say that we are part of the Black Lives Matter movement? And then the second thing is, how are we managing and steering and measuring these outcomes so that we don't get fatigued with just hearing the words Black Lives Matter, but we're actually affecting the outcomes because everybody has kind of the same playbook whereby they understand who's really doing something, who's really not doing something. That's why it's kind of ambiguous to say churches aren't doing anything, because some churches are handing out water. And is that something or is that nothing?
That's good. Shelley.
I was listening to TD Jakes. He had hosted a town hall via Zoom with a group of pastors. I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to see it. And it was so amazing. And there were pastors on that call that were literally in tears because they were admitting that they had missed the mark. They were, some of them were extremely transparent about preaching safe. Teaching safe. That we don't want to, what's the word that I'm looking for? Take that risk. I'm going to say it in a more positive way, but to take the risk of losing members that want to hear a particular message. And some of the pastors would even say that after messages, members would say, well, I didn't agree with your message, or it just seems like there are people that run their ministries for the liking or approval of its members. Well, the truth is the truth, and the truth of God will offend the non-believer. We have to be able to be very, very firm in standing up for truth. And one of the things that were said on that call, which I say all the time, is that for those who, and I'm a kingdom believer, and so I can only speak to this as it relates to my belief system, is that Jesus Christ spoke to the heart of the matter.
Yes.
He spoke to the heart of the matter. He was a source of education, which you need education to change. You got, and so he spoke to the heart of the matter. He provided new information. He went out. He was speaking and teaching to the non-believers, the prostitutes, the murderers. And so we got to get dirty. We are preaching to other holy, sanctified people.
Yes.
We're preaching every Sunday to a group of people that at least know enough to go to church.
That's right.
But how about those that don't even know to go to church or don't even understand or realize that I wouldn't even be allowed in the church?
Yes.
But like, we are the temple of God. We are the church. And that's why the closing of the churches during the pandemic was so symbolic, because now we had to learn how to establish some type of intimacy with our higher power without a choir, without a worship leader. We had to learn to do that on our own. We had to learn how to do church for real.
Come on,
we
Shelley.
had to learn how to be the word. And so here we are in a space where the churches really have to arise. The believers have to really arise. When I say the church, I'm talking about us. We are the temple.
That's right. We
are the temple. And so we have to get into action-oriented mode. We have to understand policy. Eunice, I think you said this earlier. It's important it's one thing to know the law and to know policy, but that's not what helps those who are in privileged positions. This is not what helps them to maintain their privilege. What helps them to maintain their privilege is knowing how to apply that policy and that law to push their own individual agenda.
Yeah.
They know how to apply the law and the policy. And so where is the church? How are they empowering their members with how to do that? How are they empowering their members to sit in seats that are open? How are they empowering their members to learn how policy works? How are they empowering their members to understand how important it is to get involved in local government? And so, in my opinion, and from my observations, I can't speak for every church, I think that we have, is epically a word? Because if it is, we have epically failed.
It is there now.
And so I want to play just one more 30-second clip before we wrap. Ladies, gentlemen, this has been so powerful. I'm going to show some of the comments too here, that for those of you watching the broadcast, if you're still watching the broadcast, we need you to hit the share button right now. Go ahead and put a friend's name in the comments, because what will happen is they can be alerted to go back and watch the replay and really think on these things and ask the question, what is my church doing? Wait a minute. What is my community of people doing? So this is Michael Todd, and he's obviously blown up. He's got a New York Times bestseller now. And I think he's the one who wears the sweatshirt that says, "Your pastor is Black." And he has not shied away from the conversation. I love the fact that Shelley said Jesus was in your face, unafraid to confront the culture at the time. He shocked people who could have put him to death, and ultimately they did. He went in and shocked the culture with no apologies, because he came with truth. So I want to hear I didn't hear all of this, so I'm going to hear this with you for the first time if you haven't heard it. Pastor Michael Todd.
The reason we're still talking about this, and we got to talk about it even at another level, because even this morning, that fear of racism showed back up at my front door, Bishop. The call went out for what we were all going to wear. Everybody just wear black and white, play on black and white, wear black and white. Okay, cool. So I have this leather shirt that I was going to wear. It's right here. And I went in my closet to pick up this leather shirt. But one thing you'll notice is that there's a tag on it and there's a sensor still on it. And I bought this shirt like 7 months ago. And this Sunday was my second time trying to wear this shirt. And I forgot, dang, the sensor is still on it. And I asked myself this morning when I went to change, why haven't I gotten the sensor taken off of this jacket? And when I ask myself that honestly, it's because I don't want to go into the store that I bought it from, because I feel like they're going to think I stole it.
Yep.
Woo. I had not heard that clip. I went out and got these 2 clips really fast. Truth be told, being transparent. And I was like, I hope that these are good clips. I don't even really know what to say to that.
It's a mouthful.
He said he doesn't want to go back into the store because someone could very well call the cops on him, and then he be in the same position that we've seen so many of our fellow people be in. That's really sad. I'm gonna turn it back over to Eunice and then Shelly and then Gerald for some last word. Actually, we do Eunice and then Gerald and then Shelly for your last word of encouragement or something that you have to put out there as a call to action even this morning. What are your last thoughts on this topic, Eunice?
My very passionate thought is that we all have the power to be activists. We have to hold ourselves accountable and identify what it is that we can do within our faith-based communities, within our households, even educating ourselves, staying current with what's happening in the news, aligning ourselves with organizations that are doing things to affect this movement, and then holding those organizations accountable is what's going to really make this a powerful movement and not just something that's trending right now, right? So I want everybody to be encouraged. Understand that you do have authority, that you do have power to do something very important. For me, writing is my form of activism, and I teach screenwriters to tell stories because what's happening in this time is that there's so much content and so many things happening in the world. Who's going to be our historian so that we tell this story accurately to future generations? So my form of activism is writing and teaching others how to write so that we can tell these stories in a powerful way that aligns with what's actually happening. So I encourage everybody to find your purpose and how you activate your own activism.
Woo, powerful, absolutely powerful. We're gonna have to put your contact or your handles for social media here in the comment section. Someone asked the question, what is his name again? That was Pastor Michael Todd. And you can also see the whole message on YouTube. I'm going to bring up some comments for you guys to hear before we head out. Truth is uncomfortable. Shanae, that sounds like something Shelly would say all day long. Truth is uncomfortable. And she's quoting you, Shelly. We have epically failed. Oh, that's good. Shelly, you're preaching. Hallelujah. This is a really powerful conversation. I want to thank each of you. Shanae says the panelists have touched me today. Thank you all. I am telling you that was really powerful, Eunice, how you close that. So you are a writer. Is there any way that we could see your works or support you, or how do we get in touch with you?
Well, the Wordsmith Lab, www.thewordsmithlab.com is my website. I also have a Facebook group where it's called the Wordsmith Writers Room. And that is a place where I provide free resources, support, and accountability to screenwriters of color to make sure that they have a safe space to represent their creativity. They can find their mojo, they can get some assistance in learning how to write stories, because one of the problems that I see is that we have the passion but not the education, like Dr. Shelley said. And if we can't pair those two together, then it kind of flops. So that's my mission. My goal is to touch the lives of 10,000 aspiring screenwriters and show them that they can own their voice and tell their story.
Woo, that's powerful.
So, thank you.
It is. I'm so glad we got connected. For Gerald and Shelly, basically, we met through a conference. I was able to direct and produce a whole conference right here on StreamYard. It was like the conference that never ended. It was like 8 hours long.
It was a marathon.
But the panels were amazing, and Eunice was part of the panel. So thank you, Eunice, coming to us from Chicago. We're going to head over to Gerald. Your final thoughts for the morning.
My final thoughts are we should. It's okay. I thought my mic was on mute. I'm sorry. My final thoughts were that we should hold our churches accountable.
They've been out already.
We do need to do more than what we've been doing, and change the mindset. As the body of Christ, and hold our truth. Sometimes may not be biblical truth, maybe our own opinions, our own beliefs, and I think this is something that doesn't belong in the church. So. Another way I think we can do things is sometimes we see organizations that support negative things, and sometimes if some of us, don't want to march or don't want to walk, there's a way we can impact financially too. So we need to stop supporting groups and organizations that are unsupportive or allow these kind of behaviors or have this mindset, that is unequal, right? And so that's another way we can change things.
Yeah, absolutely. Gerald, we'll be looking to see if you run for any. Are you in Osceola County?
I am in Osceola County, yes.
We'll be waiting to see if you're going to be running in any Osceola County positions of government. I'm putting you out there, Gerald. Putting you out there. Thank you for lending your voice to the conversation. I really appreciate you. And we're going to wrap this here with Shelly with a quick final word. First of all, Shelly, thank you for being here. Last week, we had a gentleman on. I don't know if you guys got to watch it. Gerald was on last week, but we had a gentleman on who was a professor of African American Studies, I believe, at a local college. And, you know, we started out the conversation was very tense. You could tell people were very tense. But by the end of the conversation, he was like in this reflective mode. And he's like, you know, I haven't really talked about the trauma. And he told the story of himself and some teenage friends being sat down on the curb by they got pulled over by the cops. They were sitting on the curb. Neighbors were driving by. People were driving by in the sense of embarrassment because they hadn't done anything wrong, but they were being profiled. And he talked about that and other incidences as being deeply traumatic. And he wanted to start some kind of a conversation with others who never told stories. He's like, I never really told a story. I found that remarkable that a professor, someone educated, someone skilled in oration, like talking, never talked about his trauma. And so I know we have to have another conversation, Shelly. I just don't know what day on the show that we address the wounds. So if you could wrap us real quick, we have about 2 minutes here.
Okay. Well, I guess a lot has been said today. I had a conversation with my son who works at the mall, and he mentioned that he came home. What day was it? I can't remember. I think it was maybe like Friday or Saturday. And he was like, Mom, can you believe that someone attempted to steal a pair of shoes from the store today? And he was like shocked, like who does that, right? And he says that when they were talking at the end, like just management, as they were closing the store down, they're like, yeah, like who does that? And can you believe she was white? And he said that he had this like desire to say, why is it because whites don't steal? And that's how he thinks. That's how my son thinks, that he was just he was a little thrown back about why it was made a point that, and can you believe that? So what would have been more believable? What would have been the more believable scenario? Do you see what I mean? Yeah. And that is what implicit bias is about. And so Eunice was talking about being action oriented. I think that it starts with educating ourselves and being open to exposing our own personal implicit biases. That is very important. And I think that we are in a place where, I'm getting calls from people who are like, what can I do to help? I feel so bad. I couldn't even sleep after watching the video. And this is what I have to say. We don't need your sympathy. Sympathy is an emotion, and emotions die down. We have to keep the same energy. Change only comes by understanding. We cannot overcome what we do not understand. I need your empathy. I need your understanding. I need your research. I need you to understand how these inequities do play out in our political system, in our financial system. Why is there such a disparity with home buying and all this stuff? Do your research. Understand, increase your knowledge. We don't need sympathy. We need empathy. The three main ways that people deal with this environment or what this climate is by avoidance, whether they're denying the truth, because if you accept it as truth, that means that you're exposing your own issues. So I prefer to throw statistics out at you, right, to prove that there is equality, that you guys, Blacks do have the same opportunities as I do, because these are the mathematics, these are the statistics.
We've seen that.
When people deny the truth, it's a defense mechanism, because if I accept that as truth, then there's a call to action that's required. This is why most of us deny truth, whether denying that your husband's a cheater, denying that your wife is a cheater, denying that whatever it is that you're in denial about, is a defense mechanism, because that means that accepting the truth becomes far more distressing than just denying it, that it even exists. We have people that avoid what they do know the truth to be. So there are people that do know the truth, but because it disrupts their comfort, comfort. I'm just going to escape, avoid the truth. Some are very aggressive, and their defense mechanism is to be verbally aggressive. So they're on social media, they're using emotionally charged words, they're using their aggression through physical aggression, property disturbance, and that's where the looting and the rioting comes in. While there are opportunists, right, that just want to get a free printer from Target, but there are people that are really channeling their anger. So people, they use denial as a source of coping. They use avoidance as a source of coping. They use aggression. And the last one, there's many, but the last one I'm going to talk about is action. These are people that are well aware of their anger. They're well aware of how they feel. They're well aware of their trauma. They're well aware of how they're in pain, but they've decided that they are going to be a part of the answer. The thing about it is we cannot judge people for how they choose to channel their emotions, but we can hold you accountable for staying there. It's important to then get to a place where we are channeling our anger, our frustration in something that is progressive, and that's where the action comes. And action is the only coping mechanism that produces change. So get out of that space. Stop the block party on social media. Blocking all of your friends that don't believe or have the same belief system as you. We need to keep them close.
I like that. The block party.
Keep them close. Stop the block party. We need to keep them close. You need to, that's your opportunity to keep them educated, whether they want to be in denial or not. But we just have to be more productive with how we are feeling about this. We need to stop reacting and start responding by using our gifts and our abilities and our strengths to be a part of the answer.
We have each decided that we are electing Shelly the head of the change committee. Oh my gosh, I know. So I told you guys, girl, Eunice, I told you she was amazing. But it's just so good to have that that perspective from someone who studies the brain and the body and how this all works together. So I know you guys have a day to get started. I want to say thank you so much, Eunice Smith, Gerald Gamera, Shelly. You're welcome to hang on, Shelly, if you'd like. I'm going to let you guys go and talk about some next guests and next things for this week. So until next time, I hope you guys come back for the next town hall. Thank you guys for joining us this morning. Bye-bye. All right, so we are going to just talk about, Shelly, we've got a really busy week. Tomorrow we have Worldwide Wednesday, so I have had a discussion with a Christian transformational coach over in the UK. She has had an interview on the podcast that has been one of the top listened to podcasts. For those of you who don't know, the Good Morning Ladies podcast was where this whole thing started, and we changed it over to the Good Morning Show. But Ola Brigwe has some very good insights. One of the things she said, Shelly, that blew my mind was she grew up in I want to say Nigeria. I hope she doesn't kick me for getting that wrong. I think she's from Nigeria. And she's living in the UK, but she said she didn't know she was Black until she left Africa and moved to the UK. That was the bomb that you dropped on me and during the conversation. And I was like, well, what does that mean? I don't even know what that feels like, because I've grown up just being a Black woman. I don't know what that even, I can't wrap my head around that. But because all she saw around her was people from her culture of this similar skin tone, and she was just a woman. She was just a girl. She wasn't a Black girl. She wasn't Black. So anyway, I just think that you all are going to love our conversation. Ola Brigwe, Christian transformational coach. That's going to air tomorrow. It's pre-recorded because our time zones.
Right.
And then on Thursday, I have asked Baron Warren to come back. And so he is the gentleman who wrote the 5 Steps to Manhood, and his book is now.
I watched that. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah, he's on his way to bestseller, and I'm so proud of him. But he has made some very strong statements on social media about, really educating. Now he has the opportunity to educate Black men, young and old, on because he also worked in the criminal justice system, on how to behave and how to handle themselves. And he calls men out to act with integrity and good character, even in the midst of this fight for our lives. So that is the week to come. I think it's really going to be amazing. But I just want to tell you, Shelly, that you've got so many comments on here. I would love for you all to connect with Shelly Shelly, how can we reach out to you? How can people reach out, especially right now in this time?
Absolutely. So they can go to my website, www.askshelly.com. They can also email to request a consultation, and that's info@askshelly.com. You can also call the office. I think most people today don't necessarily pick up the phone, but you can, and that's 407-350-5070. So that's 407-350-5070. And you can connect with us, and we will be happy to consult and talk and see where people are at and assess how we can best support.
Ask Shelly. And then today is Tuesday. So are you on today?
I am, and I go live every Tuesday at 12 o'clock.
Yay! So you have to go check her out. I'm going to actually go back in the post. I'm going to clean up the post and put replay and also reach out, and I'll put your contact information. But I'm going to show this again. Shanae said, Shelly is amazing. She made my baby leap.
Hallelujah.
Right.
You know, Candy, the question today is actually from a Caucasian female. She writes in to talk about how can she process the aggression of her Black friends. She feels that she's being attacked. She feels that when she reaches out to see how she can help, that she's getting like clobbered with aggression. And so today's topic is going to be about, of course, responding to her feedback, but also making sure that we talk about implicit bias that we all have. I remember speaking to my parents the other day because they were like, what benefit is it for African Americans to assess their own implicit bias? And I had to remind my parents that I was raised to believe that I would have a better life than my sister because I'm lighter skinned than her.
Wow.
And so we all have to take this opportunity to expose our biases in order to overcome this.
Wow. There's so much to unpack, Shelly. And you and I will have to talk offline about how we can have another discussion. But everyone, I want you to hit share on this. Go to AskShelly.com. You can also email her. It's info@AskShelly.com.
That's right.
And then tune in 12 p.m. Eastern. You can see Ask Shelly right on Facebook. And you're also on Instagram?
On Instagram as well, yes.
Right. Shelly, we love you. You are a member of the Good Morning Show family. Thank you so much. We'll let you go. We know you got to get started with your day. And I'll close it out here. So I'll talk to you later, Shelly. Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
Bye. All right, you guys. This has been truly one of the most amazing conversations. I think we dug into some things that people aren't talking about, on talking about trauma and the different levels and responses. And so that's why we love to have our therapists on to kind of help us make sense of all of this. But Town Hall Tuesday will happen again next Tuesday. So if you are wanting to share your heart and your mind, and just like these brave folks did, I put the link out there. It is for anyone to click, anyone at all who has something to share, to lend to the conversation. Come back and join us next Tuesday for Town Hall Tuesday. So tomorrow, tune in, 7:45 a.m. We'll be here with Worldwide Wednesdays, our first broadcast that goes across seas to the UK on the Good Morning Show. And then finally, Thursday, we'll have Baron Warren on. He wrote the book, 5 Steps to Manhood, and he's got some really amazing things to say and to help our men that are in this fight. So until next time, I pray that this has been an encouraging broadcast. Please hit the share button. More than anything, we want you to share the show. Put someone's name in the comment. It'll alert them to go back and watch the replay later. This is the Good Morning Show. It is your place of faith in the morning. We'll be back tomorrow, 7:45 a.m. Eastern. And I'm going to close out with the music, right? It's Town Hall Tuesday. This has been a great discussion. Thank you to all the people, the panelists who came on today. I can't thank you enough for being brave and speaking out. And I would encourage all of you believers who may watch this, as you're sharing this, write a comment. Ask your friends to engage in the conversation. Ask your pastors. Ask people in your faith-based community to get involved. And I think Shelly and Eunice and Gerald hit the nail on the head. It starts with education. It starts with the knowledge of what do we do, how can we understand policies, how can we understand how government works, and then how can we get involved and play a part in making change happen. We have to be the change. So be the change, you guys. Until tomorrow morning, see you. And be good. Be good today. Love you guys. Bye-bye.